What did you know about the splendor of the Persian Empire and the exploits of King Xerxes? The story we are telling today is not about great battles or the wisdom of rulers. It is a chronicle of madness, lust, and one of the most monstrous acts of female revenge ever recorded by chroniclers. Imagine the situation. The most powerful man in the world returns from war, broken, and seeks comfort in the forbidden. He violates every conceivable taboo, destroys his own brother's family, and enters into a liaison that would make even the gods shudder. But the real nightmare begins not with his infidelity, but from the moment his wife, Queen Amestris, finds out about it. You will learn how one careless gift, a luxurious robe, became a death sentence for an entire dynasty. We will reveal the details of that fatal birthday of the king, when by ancient law he had no right to refuse a request, and how an offended woman used this right. What she did to her rival is something historians are afraid to describe in detail, and witnesses to those events lost the power of speech from horror. This is not just palace intrigue. This is a thriller about how the lust of one man and the icy cruelty of one woman drowned the greatest court of the East in blood. Watch this video to the very end to find out how this dance of death ended and why there were simply no winners left in this story. Ready to stare into the abyss? Then let's begin. Breathe in this air. Can you feel it? It is not just the scent of sandalwood and overripe pomegranates, for which the gardens of Sardis are famous. Through the sweetness of Eastern incense, another smell breaks through. Acrid, metallic. It is the smell of colossal, universal humiliation. Imagine a man who just yesterday ordered the sea to be whipped with chains because it dared to storm without his permission. A man who led an army of 1 million to wipe Greece off the face of the earth. And today? Today he sits on silk cushions in Sardis, and the only thing he has wiped away is the remnants of his own reputation. Xerxes has returned. But the King of Kings remained somewhere back there, in the smoking waters near Salamis, among the wreckage of his fleet. Only his shadow returned here, to the golden cage of the luxurious palace, embittered, bored, and deadly dangerous. Look at him. He doesn't look broken, oh no. His beard is still impeccably curled and anointed with oils, and rings worth the price of small cities sparkle on his fingers. But look into his eyes. There is emptiness there. That same black hole that remains when you fancy yourself a god and the world slaps you in the face with reality. What does a narcissist do when his grandiose self is bursting at the seams? He doesn't go to a doctor. He doesn't seek solace in prayer. He seeks a victim. He needs a fix, an urgent injection of power to drown out the voice in his head whispering, "You lost." And Xerxes finds this fix not in wine, not in opium, but in forbidden fruit, in a woman he shouldn't even touch with a glance. Silence stands behind the walls of his chambers, but this is not a peaceful silence. It is a silence in which you can hear knives being sharpened. The empire has frozen. Satraps and generals are waiting to see who will be blamed for the defeat. And Xerxes? Xerxes is busy hunting. His new target becomes not Sparta, not Athens, but the wife of his own brother, Masistes. Think about it for a second. Masistes is not just a brother. He is the best of his commanders. A man whose loyalty is harder than Damascus steel. A man who covered the king's back when Greek hoplites were tearing through Persian ranks. And now, while Masistes inspects the troops, trying to glue the broken army back together, Xerxes stands by the window and devours his wife with his eyes. Historians will call this love. Do not believe them. Throw these fairy tales out of your head. This is not love. This is an attempt to patch a hole in an ego the size of an empire. Xerxes doesn't need this woman as a human being. He needs confirmation that he can still take what he wants, that his word is law, even if that law tramples on blood ties. He lost the war to men with spears, so now he unleashes a war against a woman armed only with her honor. The palace in Sardis turns into a theater of the absurd. Imagine this stifling atmosphere. The heat melts stones. Servants walk silently, afraid to raise their eyes. And the king, the ruler of half the world, behaves like a love-struck teenage sadist. He showers his brother's wife with gifts, golden goblets, fabrics woven by blind craftswomen, precious stones that could buy the loyalty of an entire province. But here is the snag. She says no. A firm, calm, murderous no. We don't even know her name. Herodotus, that gossip of antiquity, did not preserve it, or perhaps intentionally erased it to protect her memory. But her refusal sounds louder than the battle trumpets at Plataea. Imagine Xerxes' rage. He just lost a fleet, and now some woman dares to refuse him. Him, the man before whom nations from the Indus to the Nile fall prostrate. Every refusal of hers is a slap in the face. But instead of retreating, Xerxes only gets more fired up. This is no longer lust. It is a principle. It is a mania. He sees her as a fortress that he is obliged to take by storm, simply to prove to himself that he is still a conqueror. And where is Queen Amestris during this time? Oh, do not forget about her for a second. While Xerxes plays his dirty games, Amestris watches. She doesn't make scenes. She doesn't break dishes. She sits in her chambers and, perhaps, embroiders. The needle goes into the fabric. Up, down, up, down. Calmly, rhythmically. Her brain works just as methodically. Do you think she is jealous? Hardly. Jealousy is the lot of the weak. Amestris feels something far more dangerous, a threat to her status. Her husband's disgrace is a crack in the foundation of her own throne. She knows, if the king looks ridiculous, the empire begins to shake. But she is silent. Silent for now. Her silence is more terrifying than Xerxes' screams. It is the silence of a predator, waiting for the prey to make a mistake. Sardis is suffocating from intrigue. The air thickens, becoming viscous like blood. Courtiers whisper in corners, placing bets. How quickly will Masistes' wife fall? Will she break under the weight of gold, or under the threat of force? No one dares to tell the king that he is insane. You don't tell a tyrant the truth if you want to keep your head on your shoulders. Everyone smiles, nods, and watches as their lord transforms from a demigod into a lustful animal. Xerxes changes tactics. If she can't be bought, can she be intimidated? No, Masistes is too influential. You can't simply take a wife away from a brother without causing a mutiny in the army. Xerxes is cornered by his own laws and traditions, which he himself is supposed to guard. An irony of fate. The absolute monarch turns out to be powerless before the moral code of a single woman. It drives him crazy. He doesn't sleep. He drinks wine, but it doesn't intoxicate. It only inflames his bile. He looks at the map of his empire and sees only the face of the one who refused him. It becomes an obsession, a disease, the psychopathology of power. When you have everything, you stop valuing what is accessible. You need exactly what lies behind the glass. And you? What would you do, having limitless power and wounded pride? Could you stop upon hearing no? Or would the voice of the demon inside say, I am the king, I am allowed everything? Xerxes does not stop. A plan is born in his inflamed brain. a monstrous, twisted Byzantine plan in its complexity. If he cannot have the mother, he will go another way. He decides to bind this woman to himself by making her part of the family officially. He announces an engagement, a grandiose, dynastic wedding. His son, the heir to the throne, Darius, is marrying young Artente, the daughter of Masistes, the daughter of the very woman the king desires. Do you understand what he is doing? This is not diplomacy, this is spider strategy. He spins a web to drag the object of his passion into his house, into his palace, into his Susa. He uses his own children, his brother's children, the sacred bonds of marriage. All of this is for him merely tools, lockpicks to the bedroom of the woman who told him no. The court sighs with relief. A wedding, a celebration. Finally, the king is busy with business. Fools. They see the golden tinsel, but they don't see the rot underneath. They think this is the end of the crisis, but this is only the beginning of the end. The caravan prepares to depart for Susa. The chariot wheels are greased, chests are packed. Xerxes leaves Sardis. He leaves behind the ashes of Greece, but takes with him the fire that will burn his own house to the ground. He thinks he is a grand master making a brilliant move. He does not suspect that by opening the doors of this marriage, he is letting death into his house. The wagons move out. Dust rises over the road, hiding the sun. In one of the wagons rides young Artente, the prince's bride, an unsuspecting pawn in the game of an old libertine. In another rides her mother, thinking she has saved her honor. And in the shadow of a palanquin rides Amestris. She is still embroidering, and the thread in her hands is already stretched to the limit. Susa greets them not with coolness, but with the heat of the impending catastrophe. Xerxes' plan worked. All figures are on the board. The trap has snapped shut. But, as often happens with traps, it will catch quite the wrong paw than the trapper hunted for. And when the dust settles, only ruins will remain of the house of Xerxes. But for now, music plays, wine flows like a river, and the king smiles, looking at young Artente, in whose features he sees her mother with frightening clarity. The substitution strategy is launched. Susa met the royal cortege with stifling heat and deceptive calm. The ancient capital, the heart of the empire, where the palace walls remember the whispers of Cyrus the Great and the laws of Darius, was now to become the setting for the dirtiest family drama in the history of the dynasty. Xerxes returned home, but not as a victor, rather as a man possessed by an unclosed gestalt. The refusal of Masistes' wife became a splinter in his brain that festered with every passing day. Have you ever seen how a person used to getting everything behaves when told no? He does not accept it. He starts looking for workarounds, breaking the fates of those around him like dry twigs. The strategy chosen by the King of Kings was worthy of a twisted genius. If the impregnable fortress does not surrender the gates, he will not waste energy on a siege. He will simply buy the land around the fortress and poison the wells. The wedding of the heir to the throne, young Darius, and Masistes' daughter, the beauty Artente, was announced with pomp capable of eclipsing any military defeat. The crowd rejoiced, seeing in this union the strengthening of the dynasty. A brother marries a brother's daughter, a classic Persian way to preserve blood purity and political unity. But behind the ceremonial facade, behind the clinking of golden goblets and ritual chants, hid the cold, calculating mechanics of a predator. Look at this wedding through the eyes of a pathologist of power. Xerxes gives the girl to his son not for the happiness of the young couple. He brings the daughter of his beloved into his house. He transplants a flower from a strange garden into his bedroom, legally framing it as the marriage of children. This is the bureaucracy of vice. Xerxes signs the marriage contract, but the ink on the parchment hasn't dried yet, and his gaze is already wandering not over the scrolls, but over the figure of his son's bride. And here occurs that very psychological fracture that turns a Greek tragedy into a thriller. Time passed. The routine of palace life sucked the participants into its swamp. And suddenly, Xerxes discovered a frightening but convenient truth. Why suffer for the mother who looks at you like an enemy, if right next to her is her exact, but young copy? Artente, daughter-in-law. She had everything he loved in her mother, but without the hardness and principles of an adult woman. Youth is pliable. Youth is foolish. Youth is blinded by the glitter of the crown. Xerxes commits a substitution of the object. Psychologists call this displacement. Historians call this incest. We will call it moral cannibalism. He begins to devour the daughter to satiate himself with the image of the mother. Imagine this moment. The first glance, thrown not as a father-in-law, but as a man. The first ambiguous phrase spoken at a family dinner, from which an awkward silence hangs, but no one dares to show it. The air in the palace changes. If before it was electrified with the hatred of a rejected lover, now it has become sticky with a dirty secret. Everyone sees everything. Eunuchs avert their eyes. Maids whisper in the laundries while washing sheets. But silence is the currency with which one pays for life at the Achaemenid court. Artente does not resist, and this is perhaps the most terrible part. If her mother was steel, the daughter turned out to be wax. She quickly understood. The king's attention is not a threat. It is an elevator to the very top of the food chain. Why be just the wife of a prince who is forever in his father's shadow if you can become the favorite of the sun itself? Power is the most potent aphrodisiac, and Xerxes used it skillfully. He didn't just seduce the girl, he corrupted her soul, showing that moral laws are written for the rabble, while for them, the inhabitants of the upper floors of the palace, there exists only the right of the strong. Sacred bonds of marriage? For Xerxes, this is just a screen. He comes into his son's bedroom not as a guest, but as the owner of everything therein, including living people. This is absolute intoxication with impunity. He is as if testing the universe for strength. How far can I go before the heavens collapse on my head? He sleeps with his own son's wife. And, lo and behold, lightning does not strike the palace roof. The sun still rises over Susa. No one bursts into the chambers with accusations. This silence corrupts more than the act itself. Xerxes begins to believe in his infallibility. He forgets about Sparta, forgets about burned Athens, forgets about the shame of the fleet. In this stuffy bedroom, he is a victor again. He conquered what he wanted. Let it be a surrogate, let it be a substitution, but the feeling of possession is real. His ego, wounded and scarred, finally receives balm. But look at this situation from the other side. What is happening inside Artente's head? From a naive pawn, she turns into a player. She feels power flowing to her through the king's touch. She sees fear in the eyes of courtiers when she walks by. She understands. Now she is special. She is untouchable. She is the chosen one. And this intoxication with power is more dangerous than any wine. A little girl got a loaded weapon in her hands without knowing how to handle it. And what about the king's son, Darius? He is silent. Perhaps he doesn't know. Or, what is more likely and more terrible, he knows but prefers not to notice. To be the son of a tyrant means to be blind and deaf on command. Survival is more important than honor. In this house, betrayal has become the norm of life, a daily ration. A father betrays a son, a daughter-in-law betrays a husband, a niece betrays her mother's memory by jumping into the bed of her stalker. This is no longer a family. It is a jar of spiders that someone forgot to feed. And in the center of this web sits Xerxes, satisfied, fed, confident that he has outplayed everyone. He thinks he controls the chaos. Fool. He does not understand that chaos cannot be controlled. It can only be delayed. He destroyed the fundamental laws of the clan, and now the very structure of reality around him begins to crack. But until the thunder strikes, the king enjoys his triumph. He is generous. He is merry. He is ready to throw the whole world at the feet of his new mistress. After all, she gave him what the mother refused: submission. And in a fit of this narcissistic gratitude, in the frenzy of permissiveness, he is ready to promise her anything, any trifle, any whim. It is in such moments, when a tyrant feels on top of the world, that he is most vulnerable. He loses vigilance. He unfastens his armor. He forgets that beside him, in the shadows, there are always eyes that do not blink. Eyes of the one who wove the very fabric of his power. Amestris hasn't disappeared anywhere. She is here. She sees the new favorite. She sees how her husband looks at the girl. She sees how the girl starts to turn up her nose. And the queen smiles. Not the kind smile of a mother, but the smile of a surgeon who has finally seen the tumor and takes a scalpel in hand. She knows one simple truth unavailable to Xerxes. One must pay for all pleasures in this world, and the currency she will put on the bill will be far more expensive than gold. While Xerxes whispers love vows into Artan's ear, in the basements of the palace, fate is already beginning to weave a canvas of retribution. And the threads of this canvas are soaked not in perfume, but in pure, distilled hatred. The king thinks he is the hunter, but he is merely game that walked into the pen itself, led by lust. The trap is ready. Only the bait remains to be placed. And this bait will be a thing seemingly completely harmless. A piece of fabric. A gift. In one of those evenings when the mind is clouded by passion and the tongue loosened by vanity, Xerxes makes a fatal mistake. He utters words that cannot be taken back. Ask for whatever you want. A familiar phrase, isn't it? How many fairy tales ended badly after these words? But we are not in a fairy tale. We are in Susa, and here desires have a property of coming true in the most monstrous way. Artant, intoxicated by her power over the ruler of the world, turns her head. Her gaze falls not on mountains of gold, not on cities and provinces. Her gaze falls on the robe draped over the king's shoulders. That very robe. A symbol. A sign. Xerxes does not yet know that by opening his mouth to answer, he signs a death warrant for his house. The inertia of the fall is already unstoppable. But before blood spills on the marble, a request must be made. A request that will turn family debauchery into a political catastrophe. Look closely at this fabric. Come closer. Don't be afraid, it won't bite. Although there is more poison in it than in the fangs of a cobra. This is not just a piece of material. It is a masterpiece, woven from golden threads, purple, and time. A multicolored, shimmering robe that took months of painstaking labor. And it wasn't woven by slaves in stuffy workshops. It was created by Queen Amestris herself. Imagine this picture. The most powerful woman of the empire, whose word can execute satraps, sits at a loom and passes the shuttle through the warp. Up, down, up, down. Every knot is a thought about her husband. Every pattern is a spell for luck, for protection, for power. In Persia, a handmade gift has a sacred meaning. It is part of the giver's soul. Amestris handed Xerxes not just clothes, she handed him her loyalty, materialized in silk. It was her flag with which she marked her territory. This man belongs to me. And what does Xerxes do? He puts on this sacred amulet, this symbol of marital union, to go to his mistress. Cynicism? Oh no, it is worse. It is fatal, suicidal stupidity. It is as if a modern husband put on a gift from his wife for a date with her rival, but multiply this by the scale of absolute monarchy, where every gesture is politics. Xerxes goes to Artainte, shining in Amestris's robe like a peacock. He feels invulnerable. It seems to him that he has conquered both women. One dresses him, the other entertains him. He revels in his greatness. In Artainte's chambers, it is stifling with incense and flattery. The young favorite, who just yesterday was simply a niece, now feels like a goddess. The king is at her feet. The king of kings, ruler of millions, looks at her with puppy eyes. And at this moment, when reason finally drowns in hormones, Xerxes utters those very words. The killer phrase. The phrase that destroyed empires more often than the plague. "Ask me for whatever you want," he says, lounging on the cushions. "I swear by the gods, I will grant any wish of yours." He thinks she will ask for jewelry, maybe an estate with vineyards, or a title for her father. He is ready to pay off with gold, for he has mountains of gold. But he forgot who he is dealing with. Artainte is not a politician. She is a spoiled girl who got hold of power. She doesn't need abstract cities. She needs triumph. She needs proof that she is the alpha female in this pride. Her finger rises and points to the king's shoulders. "Give me the robe," she says. Silence. Do you hear that ringing in your ears? That is the sound of Xerxes' world collapsing. The intoxication evaporates instantly. Blood drains from his face. He understands. Oh gods, he finally understands what he has done. This is not just a request for a gift. This is a demand for the public humiliation of the queen. To appear in the robe that Amestris wove means to declare to the whole court, "I won. The lawful wife is nobody, and I am everything." This is a declaration of war. And not just any war, but a war with a woman who never loses. Xerxes begins to panic. For the first time in a long while, we see not a tyrant, but a pathetic merchant trying to save his skin. "Take cities," he begs. "Take gold! I will give you so much gold that you can buy your own army. Do you want to command troops?
I will give you the right to lead soldiers."
Imagine this absurdity. The king of Persia offers his mistress command of an army, just to not give up a robe. He offers her entire cities, thousands of human lives, tax revenues from provinces, everything, just to keep this cursed piece of fabric. Because he knows, Amestris will forgive cities. She won't notice the gold. But the robe? Never. But Artainte is implacable. She sees fear in the king's eyes, and this fear only inflames her appetite. She understands. If he is afraid to give up a rag, it means this rag is worth more than gold. It means real power is in it. "You swore," she reminds him, whimsically pouting her lips. "You gave a king's word." Xerxes is trapped. On one side, the wrath of his wife, which is as terrible as an earthquake. On the other, loss of face before a mistress, and violation of a sacred oath given before the gods. In the ancient world, a monarch's word is a law of physics. To break an oath means to admit one's weakness. And Xerxes, this narcissist with a fragile ego, fears nothing more in the world than appearing weak. He looks at the robe. He looks at Artente. In his head, scales tip, creak, and finally, lust and pride outweigh the instinct of self-preservation. He takes off the robe. At this moment, the history of the Achaemenids takes a sharp turn into the abyss. He hands the fabric to the girl. Artente grabs it like a predator grabs prey. She won. She forced the most powerful man on earth to betray his family for her whim. But this is not enough for her. Oh, human stupidity is truly boundless. If she had hidden this robe in a chest, if she had kept it as a secret trophy, perhaps she would have lived a long life. But Artente wants glory. She puts the robe on herself. She starts wearing it everywhere. She dances in it before mirrors. She comes out in it to the servants. She wears the queen's labor on her shoulders, like a hunter wears the skin of a killed lion. She parades her victory, not understanding that she has actually put on a burial shroud. Rumors in the palace spread faster than fire in a dry steppe. Eunuchs whisper, maids exchange glances, guards lower their eyes. Everyone understands. This is a catastrophe. Such a thing cannot be hidden. Such a thing cannot be silenced. It is a spit in the face of hierarchy. A mistress wears the wife's clothes. A daughter-in-law wears a gift from a mother-in-law made for her husband. This is a double, triple taboo, violated with the brazen smile of an idiot. And, of course, the news reaches Amestris. What do you think she does? Screams? Cries? Tears her hair out? No. That is the lot of weak women from Greek dramas. Amestris is a daughter of Persian nobility, the steel lady of the East. When she is told that Artente is parading around in her robe, Amestris utters not a word. She simply freezes. There are no tears in her eyes, only cold calculation. She doesn't blame her husband. She considers men primitive creatures, driven by instincts. Not much is expected of them. She doesn't even blame Artente herself. What can you expect from a stupid girl? No. Her anger finds another target, a deeper one, more logical in her twisted coordinate system. Who allowed this to happen? She thinks. Who raised this girl? Who let her into my husband's bed? The mother, Masistes' wife, the very woman Xerxes wanted originally. In Amestris' brain, a monstrous but flawless logical chain is formed. Artente is merely a tool. The true enemy is the mother, who, the queen believes, orchestrated this whole spectacle to humiliate her and seize power through her daughter. Amestris' hatred focuses on a single point, like a sunbeam through a lens, ready to burn a hole in reality. She won't make a scene now. No. Revenge is a dish served not just cold, but frozen to absolute zero. She will wait. She has the patience of a sphinx. She knows a special day is coming soon. A day when the king cannot refuse her. A day when roles will change, and she, Amestris, will be the one dictating terms. The robe on Artente's shoulders ceased to be fabric. Now, it is a fuse slowly burning down, creeping toward a powder keg planted under the foundation of the royal house. Xerxes, by giving this gift, didn't just make a mistake. He personally signed the death warrant for his family. He thought he bought love. In reality, he bought a ticket to a slaughterhouse. Meanwhile, Artente whirls before the mirror, admiring the golden patterns, as time begins counting down the last days of peace and quiet. Soon, the music will stop, and a very different dance will begin.
the dance of blades. And when this dance begins, no one will remain clean. Because the hatred of a rejected queen is not an emotion. It is a force of nature, and it will sweep away everything in its path. Get ready.
What you see next will make you question whether these people have souls. Silence. A silence is hung in the corridors of the Susa palace that sends shivers down the servants' spines. You probably expect screams, broken dishes, the scratched face of an unfaithful husband, the hysterics of an insulted woman. Forget it. Leave these cheap scenes for market storytellers. We are at the top of the food chain of the Persian Empire, and here revenge is served not hot, but icy, like the peaks of the Hindu Kush. Amestris, upon learning that her husband's mistress is flaunting her robe, did not shed a tear. She turned into stone, into a statue of Nemesis herself. In her head, cold and sharp as a razor, a picture instantly formed. Is Artainte to blame? Pfft. For the queen, this girl is just an empty-headed vessel, a tool. A stupid child could not have thought of such sophisticated humiliation on her own. No, behind the daughter's back, Amestris sees the shadow of the mother, Masistes' wife. The very woman Xerxes coveted originally. In Amestris's twisted logic, everything fell into place. It is a conspiracy. The mother uses the daughter to displace the lawful queen. The robe is not just a rag, it is a banner of a coup. Therefore, the retaliatory strike must be delivered not against the pawn, but against the opponent's queen. Amestris begins to wait. She has the patience of a sniper who can lie in ambush for days without blinking. She knows Xerxes has a vulnerability. Not lust, no. His vulnerability is his greatness, his adherence to protocol. He is a prisoner of his own laws. And there is one day a year when this absolute monarch becomes absolutely defenseless. This day is called Tukta, the king's birthday. Imagine the scale of this celebration. The only day of the year when the King of Kings personally dines with his subjects. 15,000 guests. Tables groan with delicacies brought from all corners of the world. Camel meat from Arabia, oysters from the Mediterranean, wines aged for centuries. Xerxes sits at the head of the table, anointed with oils, shining like the sun itself. He is generous. He hands out gifts. He laughs. He feels like a god descended to earth. But the Feast of Tukta has one rule, a sacred, unbreakable custom written in the blood of ancestors. On this day, the king has no right to refuse a request. Anyone honored to address the monarch at the feast table will receive what they desire. This is a demonstration of omnipotence. Ask whatever you want. My power is limitless. Xerxes adores this custom. It is his minute of glory, his way to indulge his vanity. But this time, Amestris sits at the table. And she is not drinking wine. She is watching. The feast is in full swing. The air is heavy with the smell of roasted meat and sweet incense. Musicians play something bravura. Xerxes, relaxed and content, turns to his chief wife. He thinks the storm has passed. After all, she was silent all this time. Does that mean she swallowed the insult? Does that mean she resigned herself? Oh, the holy simplicity of a narcissistic idiot. He, with the wide smile of the master of life, asks her, "What do you want on this great day, my queen? Ask!" The hall goes quiet. Thousands of eyes are fixed on the royal box. Everyone expects her to ask for new lands, palaces, or mountains of gems. Amestris slowly puts her goblet on the table. The sound of metal on wood sounds like the strike of a judge's gavel. She raises her eyes to her husband. There is no love in them, no hatred, only the abyss. "Give me Masistes' wife," she says. The smile slides off Xerxes' face like plaster from a wall during an earthquake. He doesn't believe his ears. He expected anything, a demand to execute Artente, a demand to banish the rival. But his brother's wife? A woman who has nothing to do with it? A woman who lives quietly and righteously. "Why do you need her?" the king babbles, feeling cold sweat begin to flow under his embroidered robe. Amestris does not raise her voice. She doesn't need to. She holds him by the throat by the very fact of a public request. "You swore," she reminds him. "The law of Tukta is holy. Give her to me." Xerxes understands. He is in a trap. A shiny, golden trap that he built himself with his traditions. If he refuses, he violates an ancient custom in front of all Persian nobility. He will show that the king's word is worth nothing, that he is a liar and an oath-breaker. For an Eastern despot, losing face is more terrible than losing a province. But to give up his brother's wife? He knows what Amestris will do to her. He isn't stupid. He sees that look. It is a death sentence. And not just death. It will be something that even demons would shudder at. Besides, Masistes is his most loyal brother. To betray him means to destroy the family completely. Xerxes tries to bargain. The scene repeats like a bad dream. Only recently he offered cities to a mistress to save a robe. Now he offers cities to a wife to save a human being. "Take gold," he whispers, leaning toward her so the guests don't hear his humiliation. "Take the treasury. Take any other woman. Why do you need her? She is innocent." "There are no innocent ones," reads in Amestris' eyes. "There are only those who stand in my way." She is adamant. She sits straight, majestic and terrible, the embodiment of inevitability. She knows she will win. She calculated his moves 10 steps ahead. Xerxes is weak. His vanity is stronger than his conscience. He won't be able to say no in front of 15,000 witnesses. Look at this duel. It is not a battle of swords. It is a battle of wills. And Xerxes loses. He looks at his generals, at the satraps, at the ambassadors. They are waiting. They crave the attraction of royal generosity. They do not know that right now, the fate not of one woman, but of the entire dynasty is being decided. Xerxes breaks. Do you hear that crack? That is the backbone of his morality breaking. He slowly nods. "Take her," he exhales. One word, 4 letters. In Russian, beri. And a human life is sold for the observance of etiquette. Amestris doesn't even smile. Triumph for her is not an emotion. It is an accomplished fact. She stands up and leaves the banquet hall. She received her gift. Now she has work to do. And Xerxes remains seated. The wine in his goblet looks like blood. The celebration continues. Music plays. Guests laugh, unsuspecting that right now, while they chew on roasted peacocks, the royal guard is already galloping toward Masistes' house. Xerxes tries to smile, but his face looks like a mask of a corpse. He just betrayed his brother to save face before a crowd of drunken courtiers. He thinks the worst is behind him. That he got off with little blood. That Amestris will simply humiliate the rival, maybe cut her hair or send her into exile. He doesn't understand that he gave an innocent lamb into the paws of a creature that long ago forgot what mercy is. That night in Susa, no one slept peacefully. Even the air seemed electrified with a premonition of trouble. The guard sent by Amestris burst into Masistes' wife's house quietly, in a businesslike manner. No explanations, only the king's order. The woman was torn from her bed.
torn away from her children. She is led not to a dungeon. She is led to the queen's private chambers, to where the walls are thick and screams are not heard outside. Amestris is already waiting. The tools are laid out. No, not an executioner's torture tongs. That would be too crude, too masculine. The queen has her own approach to destruction. She wants to destroy not the body, but the image. Beauty.
The very thing that, in her opinion, became the cause of all troubles. The doors close. Behind them begins what history will remember as one of the most monstrous acts of female revenge. Xerxes continues drinking at his feast, trying to drown his conscience in wine. And in another wing of the palace, the surgery of hatred begins. We won't watch, but we will hear. And what comes out of those doors in the morning will no longer be a human being. It will be a message. A living, breathing, mutilated message to anyone who dares to cross Amestris. The trap slammed shut, and steel teeth sank into flesh. The sun rises over Susa. Usually, dawn in Persia is a time for prayer and coolness, but today the first rays of the sun illuminate not the awakening of the city, but the finale of a nightmare. The doors of Queen Amestris's chambers open. Have you ever seen the psyche of hardened veterans break? Guards from the Immortals Corps stood at the doors. These are men who went through fire and water, who walked over corpses in the Thermopylae Gorge, who saw cities burn and fleets sink. They cannot be surprised by death. Death is their trade. But when the doors opened and the guards saw what was inside, they recoiled. One of them, a grey-haired warrior with a scar across his face, turned away and covered his mouth with his hand to hold back vomit. Another simply froze, turning white as a sheet, and dropped his spear. The ring of metal on stone in the dead silence sounded like a funeral bell. Because out of the doors walked, or rather was carried out, not a corpse. If it were a dead body, that would be mercy. Amestris grants no mercy. Out of the doors came a living, breathing, pulsating message. The woman whom just yesterday Xerxes called the most desirable in the empire ceased to exist. No, her heart was still beating. Her lungs were still drawing in air, but the personality was no more.
Amestris didn't just order pain to be inflicted.
She approached the matter like a sculptor working in reverse. She cut off everything superfluous, and superfluous in her understanding was everything that made this woman beautiful, everything that attracted the king's gaze, everything that made up her human appearance. You don't need to know the details. Your imagination will paint them more terrifying than any words. Suffice it to say that beauty was erased from her face with surgical, icy cruelty. Where there were features that drove men crazy, now there was only a bloody mask, a ruin, a catastrophe of flesh. Amestris destroyed her nose, ears, lips, tongue. She turned a human face into a screaming void. Think about the psychology of this act. Why did she leave her alive? To kill a rival is banal. The dead become martyrs. The dead are pitied. Beautiful legends are composed about the dead. Amestris wanted something else. She wanted to turn the object of desire into an object of absolute animal disgust. Xerxes wanted this woman? Fine. Let him look at her now. Let him try to feel lust looking at this mess. It was a kind of shock therapy, a barbaric treatment for the royal libido. But this was a message not only to her husband, it was a manifesto for the entire court, written in blood on a living canvas. Look, said Amestris, with every scar on the victim's body. Look and remember. This is the price of ambition. This is what happens to those who think they can play thrones without knowing the rules. You can be the king's favorite. You can be the mother of a future queen. You can be innocent as a lamb. I don't care. If you stand in my way, I won't just kill you. I will turn your life into a hell, compared to which death will seem like a gift. The victim was loaded onto a stretcher. There was a lot of blood, but Amestris's healers knew their business. They didn't let her bleed out. The woman had to live. She had to feel every second of her new existence. She was sent home. Imagine this journey. The morning streets of Susa, awakening merchants, random passers-by. The stretcher is not covered. Amestris wanted this to be seen. People shied away. Women covered their children's eyes. A whisper of horror crawled through the city faster than the plague. It was terror in its purest form. State terrorism directed inward at its own elite. And what about Xerxes? The king of kings was likely still asleep after a drunken night, or suffering from a hangover, trying not to think about what he had done. He paid off. He paid the price. He thought the incident was exhausted. He, in his naive stupidity, assumed that Amestris would limit herself to humiliation, maybe exile. He didn't understand that he lives with a monster that surpasses him in cruelty 10 times over. Xerxes was cruel out of weakness and fear. Amestris was cruel out of strength and conviction. When Xerxes sees the consequences of his cowardice, what will he feel? Pity? Horror? Or perhaps relief that this anger did not fall on him? Tyrants are selfish creatures. Most likely his first thought will be, "Thank the gods it's not me." But the second thought will be fear. Animal fear of the woman who shares his bed. He will understand that in his own house there is a force he does not control. And this force just demonstrated its capabilities. Meanwhile, the stretcher approaches Masistes' house. Masistes, the king's brother, war hero, a man of honor. He wasn't at that feast, or left early, tired of the court's hypocrisy. He is waiting for his wife's return. Perhaps he is worried. The royal guard took her at night. That never bodes well. But he calms himself. Xerxes is his brother. They are of one blood. The king, of course, is a petty tyrant, but he won't cross the line. He won't harm a family member. After all, there are boundaries? Laws of gods, laws of hospitality, laws of kinship. Masistes stands at the gates of his palace. He hears the guards' steps. He sees the procession. His heart skips a beat. Why are they so silent? Why do healers fuss around the stretcher? He takes a step forward. The guards part. In their eyes, he sees not the usual respect for a general, but pity. Sticky, humiliating pity. They lower their eyes, unable to meet his gaze. "What is wrong with her?" Masistes asks. His voice trembles, though he tries to keep his composure. No one answers. They just point to the stretcher. Masistes approaches. His hand reaches for the coverlet that barely covers the mangled body. Time slows down. In this second, not just the life of one family collapses. In this second, loyalty collapses. The empire collapses. Because what Masistes sees under that coverlet will destroy the brother in him and give birth to an avenger. He throws back the fabric. The scream that should have burst from his chest gets stuck in his throat. His brain refuses to process the visual information. This cannot be. This is not his wife. This is a piece of meat from a butcher's shop. But he recognizes the eyes. Those very eyes, full of insane pain and a silent question. What for? And in those eyes, he sees the reflection of his brother. The reflection of Xerxes. An executioner didn't do this. The king did this. By his inaction, his lust, his cowardice. Xerxes didn't hold the knife, but he was the one who guided Amestris' hand. Masistes falls to his knees beside the stretcher, but he doesn't cry. Tears are water, and here, blood is needed. Inside him, in the very depth of his soul where loyalty to the throne lived, something snaps with a loud crack. In this second, the general dies. A rebel is born. And in the palace, Amestris calmly washes the blood off her hands. She looks at her reflection in a silver mirror and fixes her hair.
For her, the morning is just beginning. She cleaned up the mess. She eliminated the threat. She showed everyone who is the boss in the house. She thinks she won. She doesn't know that by destroying one woman, she created an enemy who has nothing left to lose. And this enemy has the best cavalry in Asia under his command. The wind changes. It no longer smells of incense. Now it distinctly smells of civil war. Do you smell that? That is the smell of burning bridges. Xerxes thought he bought peace at the cost of one woman's life. In reality, he just sold his crown. The deal is done. The goods are delivered. But the bill for it is yet to be paid. And the payment will be collected not in gold, but in the heads of sons. While in one wing of the palace, Queen Amestris conducted her monstrous anatomy lesson, in the other wing, King Xerxes tried to save his empire from civil war. Do you think he prayed, or tore his hair out in repentance? No. At this moment, Xerxes acted like a typical embezzling official trying to cover his tracks before an audit arrives. Only, instead of a stolen budget, he had his brother's sold wife on his hands. And instead of an auditor, the brother himself, Masistes, a man backed by an army and the people's love. The king understood perfectly. What is happening right now in his spouse's chambers cannot be hidden. You can't just say, she fell on a knife 20 times. This is a declaration of war. And the only way to prevent a rebellion is to break Masistes before he sees what his beloved woman was turned into. Xerxes decided to act proactively. He needed an accomplice. If he forces his brother to give up his wife himself, then all the blame will fall on family troubles, not on royal tyranny. Xerxes summons Masistes. Imagine this scene. The throne room is empty. No extra ears. Only two brothers. One is all-powerful, but trembling with fear. The other is an unsuspecting general who has just pulled from inspecting troops. The air between them is not just tense, it is toxic. Xerxes smiles, but this smile looks more like a spasm. He nervously twists a ring on his finger, choosing words. How do you tell a man that you just gave his spouse to be torn apart, and at the same time remain a benefactor in his eyes? Masistes, Xerxes begins, trying to make his voice sound firm. You are the son of Darius, my own brother. You are dear to me. A classic manipulator's opening. First praise, then strike. Listen to me. That woman you live with, she doesn't suit you. Leave her. Masistes looks at the king with bewilderment. What is he talking about? Leave his wife? The mother of his adult sons? The woman he loves more than life? It sounds like the ravings of a madman. In return, continues Xerxes, raising the stakes, I give you my own daughter. Marry her. She is young, she is of royal blood.
Divorce your wife. She is displeasing to me.
Think about the cynicism of this offer. Xerxes tries to bribe his brother with his own daughter. He trades his children like cattle at a market. He thinks any problem can be solved by barter. Hand over the old wife to me, receive a new, improved model. For Xerxes, people are things. If a thing breaks or becomes inconvenient, it is thrown away and another one is taken. He sincerely doesn't understand why Masistes is silent. Is this not a generous gift? A princess of the blood in exchange for some woman? But Masistes is a man of a different mold. He is made of material that has long become scarce in Persia: honor. He listens to his brother and doesn't believe his ears. "Sire," he says quietly, and steel rings in his voice. "What strange speech is this? You order me to leave a wife who bore me beautiful sons and daughters, a wife who is dear to my heart, and take your daughter? No." This "no" hits Xerxes harder than a Greek spear. He is refused for the second time in this story. First the mother, now the husband. No one wants to play by his rules. No one wants to be a pawn in his sick game. "I will not do this," Masistes declares firmly. "Do not force me. Leave your daughter for another husband, and I will remain with the one given to me by fate." He tries to leave with dignity. He speaks softly but firmly. "We are still brothers. Do not force me to choose between duty and heart." He doesn't know there is no choice anymore. He doesn't know that while they speak, his fate is already bleeding out in the hands of executioners. And here, the mask of the virtuous monarch falls from Xerxes' face. His brother's refusal detonates his paranoia. He perceives Masistes' loyalty to his wife as a personal insult, as mutiny. "You will regret these words," screams the king, breaking into a screech. "You will not get my daughter. But neither will you live any longer with the one you cling to so much.
You will understand what it means to defy the king."
This is not just a threat. It is a sentence. Xerxes reveals his cards in a rage. He effectively confesses, "I have already destroyed what you love." Masistes freezes. The meaning of his brother's words reaches him. A cold wave of horror washes over him from head to toe. He understands. The irreparable has happened. He doesn't waste time on bows. He turns around and runs. The general runs from the throne room, violating every conceivable protocol. He runs not as a courtier, but as a husband sensing trouble. He bursts into his house, and there he finds the answer to all questions. What he sees breaks his reality. We have already spoken of this horror, but imagine it through the eyes of a loving husband. He left a blooming woman at home and returned to bloody ruins. Amestris didn't kill her. Oh no. She did worse. She left her as a living reminder of who holds the power here. In this second, Masistes ceases to be the king's brother. Blood ties burn in the flames of hatred. He no longer sees a ruler in Xerxes. He sees a rabid animal that needs to be shot. But he isn't a fool. He understands. Right now, in the center of Susa, he is powerless. If he raises a sword here, he will be killed in a minute, and with him, his sons. A plan is needed. An army is needed. A base is needed. Bactria. This word flashes in his consciousness like a beacon. Masistes is the satrap of Bactria. It is the richest province in the east, a land of harsh warriors who adore their governor. Bactrians and Sakas are the elite of the cavalry. If he gets there, If he raises the banner of rebellion, the entire eastern part of the empire will stand under his banners. Persia will split in half, and he, Masistes, has a real chance to overthrow the mad brother and avenge his wife. A race against time begins. Every minute of delay is death. Masistes acts quickly and harshly. No tears, no farewells. He gathers his sons, young, strong warriors who, upon seeing their mother, also crave their uncle's blood. He gathers his personal guard, the few who can be trusted in this snake pit. "We are leaving," he throws out. This is not the flight of cowards. It is the tactical retreat of a predator moving into the shadows to prepare a jump. They saddle horses. They take only weapons. Gold, clothes, luxury, all remains. It is ballast. Now their currency is steel. Masistes leads his small detachment out of the gates of Susa. He looks at the palace towering over the city for the last time. There, behind high walls, Xerxes is probably still drinking wine, trying to drown out fear. There sits Amestris, pleased with her work. They think they won. They think Masistes will swallow the insult, as any other court sycophant would swallow it. They are mistaken. Dust rises from under hooves. The detachment leaves east, toward the rising sun. Bactria is thousands of miles away, but hatred is a fuel more powerful than any fatigue. Masistes rides silently. In his ears is not the whistle of the wind, but his wife's moans. In his eyes is not the road, but the picture of what was done to her. Xerxes in the palace receives a report. Masistes has left the city. He did not resign himself. He did not accept the terms. He left. And he didn't leave alone, but with sons and guards. Cold sweat breaks out on the king. The full scale of the catastrophe he created with his own hands finally reaches him. If Masistes reaches Bactria, it is the end. It is a civil war in which Xerxes, with his authority undermined after the Greek shame, doesn't have that many chances. Bactria is power. Bactria is rebellion. Xerxes understands. He cannot let his brother reach it. Family feelings? Forget it. Now it is a question of survival. The King of Kings gives an order that finally turns him into Cain. He summons his best assassins. An army must catch up with one man. The entire might of the empire must be thrown to stop a handful of riders. The road to the east turns into a front line. Masistes gallops for justice. Xerxes sends a chase for his power. Who will win this race? And what price will the dynasty pay for this night of long knives, stretched over hundreds of miles of road? The air trembles with tension. History holds its breath. Brother went against brother. And the reason for this is not politics, not land, not money. The reason is the wounded ego of one man and the cold cruelty of one woman. Welcome to the hell they built for themselves. The race has begun. Have you ever wondered how fast fear moves? That night it moved faster than the best Arabian steeds from the royal stables. The road to Bactria turned into an artery through which the poison of civil war pulsed. Masistes and his sons galloped away from Susa, driving horses into the ground, not looking back, driven by one goal: to survive and return with a sword in hand. They were not just fugitives, they were living torches, ready to set the eastern provinces of the empire on fire. Xerxes, remaining in the golden cage of his palace, understood this perfectly. The intoxication had evaporated completely, giving way to icy, crystal-clear paranoia. He looked at the map. Bactria, a land of harsh winds and even harsher people. The satrapy governed by Masistes. If his brother gets there, if he stands before his legions and shows them his wife's bloody tunic, the empire will split. This is no longer a family quarrel. It is a geopolitical catastrophe ticking like a bomb. In this second, Xerxes makes a decision that finally erases the human in him and leaves only a function. The function, tyrant. He cannot afford the luxury of family feelings. He cannot afford doubts. The logic of power dictates the only possible move. Total annihilation. Not just stop, not just arrest. Wipe off the face of the earth. A punitive squad is sent in pursuit, not a patrol of guards. The elite. Faceless and nameless men whose loyalty is bought with gold and fear. They have a simple order. No one must reach Bactria. Neither Masistes, nor his sons, nor servants. No one. This is called sanitary cleansing. When gangrene affects a limb, it isn't treated with poultices. It is amputated. And Xerxes, with a face twisted by horror and determination, raises the axe over his own blood. Imagine this frantic rhythm of the chase, the pounding of hooves merging into a single hum, dust clogging lungs, the sun frying without pity. Masistes is an experienced warrior. He knows how to evade pursuit, but he is burdened by family. He is trying to save the children, and the pursuers have no burden except the weight of the order. They fly like hounds that have caught the scent of a wounded beast. The gap shrinks, mile by mile. Hope melts like a mirage in the desert. And then, somewhere on a nameless stretch of road, far from the eyes of the world, the trap snaps shut. This wasn't a heroic battle worthy of Skald's songs. Don't expect a description of a sword duel to pathos-filled music. It was a massacre, dirty, fast, and effective. The royal assassins overtake Masistes' squad. The numerical superiority is overwhelming. Masistes, a general who went through the hell of the Greek wars, accepts his last fight. He fights not for the king, not for glory, but for the lives of his boys. But what can one lion do against a pack of jackals? They surround him. The ring tightens. The ring of steel, screams of horses, dull thuds. And here the most terrible thing happens. Xerxes' order was specific. Not just kill the brother, kill everyone. Masistes' sons are the seeds of revenge. If even one is left alive, in 10 years, he will return for his uncle's head. Dynastic logic is ruthless. If you chop down a tree, grub up the roots too. Imagine the horror of a father watching his children being killed. Xerxes took his wife from him, destroying her soul and body. Now he takes his future. The last thing Masistes sees in this life is not the sky of Persia, but his line being cut short. He is killed, knowing that he is already dead inside. Silence descends on the road. The dust settles. It is over. The satrap of Bactria, brother of the king of kings, hero of the empire, lies in road dirt mixed with his sons and faithful servants. There are no witnesses, no judges, only the wind spreading the smell of blood. The assassins do their job to the end. They cannot return empty-handed. They need proof. They collect trophies. Terrible trophies that need to be presented to the client to receive a reward. In Susa, Xerxes waits. He doesn't sleep.
He walks around his chambers,
Flinching at every rustle. He is afraid. Afraid not of the brother, but that the brother will survive. He knows, if Masistes got away, Xerxes' own days are numbered. But then, dust appears on the horizon. The riders return. They ride slowly,
horses exhausted. A messenger enters the throne room. He doesn't say a word. He simply lays the proof at the king's feet. Xerxes looks. And at that moment, he exhales. The throne is saved. There will be no rebellion. Bactria will remain loyal, receiving a new, obedient governor. The empire is stable. The price? Just the life of a blood brother and nephews. Just the soul of the king himself, which has finally turned black. Look at him now. He won. But look into his eyes. There is no triumph there. There is only endless, icy loneliness. He killed the only person who loved him simply because they were of one blood, and not because he had a crown. Masistes was his support, his shield, his shadow.
Now Xerxes stands alone on top of the world, surrounded by emptiness. He thinks he eliminated the threat. He thinks that by killing his brother, he secured himself. What irony. In reality, he just knocked the last brick out of the foundation of his house. The court sees everything. Generals, eunuchs, satraps, they watch. They saw how the king treated the most loyal of his men. And what conclusion do they draw? If he didn't spare his own brother, will he spare us? Loyalty dies the moment Masistes' head falls to the floor. Cold calculation takes its place. Fear is poor cement for building an empire. It crumbles. Xerxes' entourage understands. Serving this man is dangerous. Being loyal to him is deadly. The only way to survive under such a ruler is to strike first. Masistes' blood hasn't dried on the king's hands yet, and shadows are already beginning to whisper in the dark corners of the palace. Xerxes locked the doors, posted guards, and thinks he is safe. Fool. He doesn't understand that the real threat is not in Bactria. The real threat is here, right behind his back, in his own bedroom, in the eyes of those who serve him wine. The act of fratricide became a signal. Limiters are removed. The moral code of the Achaemenid dynasty is torn to shreds. Now everything is allowed. If the king is a butcher, why should his subjects be saints? The atmosphere in the palace changes. It becomes stifling, putrid. It is the smell of decomposition. Outwardly, everything shines: gold, silk, smiles. But inside, the organism of the empire is already dead. Xerxes has turned into a paranoid man who shies away from his own shadow. He sees traitors in every mirror, and, what is most terrible, he is right. Having eliminated the external enemy, he spawned thousands of internal ones. Masistes' story ended in roadside dust. The story of Xerxes' fall is just entering its final, bloodiest phase. He thought he cleared the field. In reality, he just fertilized the soil for the seeds of conspiracy, which will sprout faster than he can wash the blood off his hands. Do you hear that rustling? That isn't the wind. That is daggers being sharpened by those who swore eternal loyalty just yesterday. The agony of power has begun. The silence that followed Masistes' murder was deceptive. It wasn't the calm that comes after a storm. It was the dead silence of a crypt into which the royal palace had turned. Xerxes, locked in his chambers, assumed he had solved all problems. He eliminated the brother who could become a rival. He intimidated the court, showing that there are no untouchables. He thought fear was the most reliable foundation for a throne. What a fatal delusion. Fear is acid. If you spill too much of it, it will corrode the vessel in which it is stored. Look at this palace now. Outwardly, everything remains the same.
Guards in gilded armor stand at posts. Eunuchs carry trays of fruit. Scribes scratch with pens, recording taxes. But beneath this glossy surface, an irreversible process of rot is underway. The Achaemenid Empire, this colossus that held half the world in its fist, is dying from within. And it is dying not on battlefields, but here, in the dark corridors of Susa. Eliminating the external threat merely exposed the internal void. The court, that pack of sensitive predators, instantly caught the change of scent. Before, Xerxes smelled of strength and divine right. Now he smells of madness and weakness. By killing the most loyal man, his brother, the king violated an unspoken contract with the elite. If Masistes, a hero and a relative, can be killed, who is safe? Satraps exchange glances. Generals hold their hands on sword hilts a bit tighter than necessary. The loyalty that held the dynasty together for centuries has evaporated. Its place was taken by cold, cynical calculation. In this atmosphere of general mistrust, two figures step onto the proscenium. Look closely at them. They do not wear crowns, but the fate of Asia is currently in their hands. The first is Artabanus, commander of the palace guard. Hyrcanian by origin, a man of war, a pragmatist to the marrow of his bones. He sees the king every day. He sees the shaking hands of the ruler of the world, his empty eyes, his paranoid fits. Artabanus is not a philosopher. He is a soldier. And as a soldier, he understands. A commander who has lost his mind and started shooting at his own is dangerous to the entire unit. For Artabanus, Xerxes ceased to be a sacred figure. He became a problem. And problems in the army are customarily eliminated. The second player is Achaemenid, the chief eunuch, keeper of the royal bedchamber, a shadow man. He knows all the secrets, all the vices, all the weaknesses of Xerxes. He sees the king without parade clothes, pathetic and vulnerable. Achaemenid understands. The ship is sinking. Xerxes is dragging the empire to the bottom, and if the cable isn't cut, they will all go to feed the fish along with the mad captain. These two, the sword and the pillow, strength and cunning, find each other. They don't need long negotiations. They don't need secret meetings in basements by candlelight. A single glance in the corridor is enough, a barely noticeable nod. In a world where walls have ears, a conspiracy is born in silence. Understand their motivation. This is not an ideological rebellion. They don't want freedom, democracy, or justice. Leave those fairy tales to the Greeks. Here, in the heart of the East, they are driven by pure instinct of self-preservation. They understand. Xerxes has become uncontrollable. Today, he killed a brother. Tomorrow, he will execute the commander of the guard because he had a bad dream.
Killing the king for them is not a crime. It is a sanitary purge. It is removing a gangrenous limb to save the rest of the organism. He is a monster, Achaemenid possibly whispers, handing Artabanus a cup of water. He is a dead man, Artabanus answers with a look. They begin to plan. The plan is simple and monstrous in its mundaneness. Why raise an army? Why storm the palace? They have the keys to all doors. Artabanus controls the guard. Achaemenid controls access to the body. The king, who spent so much effort building walls against the outside world, locked himself in a cage with his own killers. Xerxes, meanwhile, continues his feast during the plague. He surrounded himself with flatterers and fortune-tellers, trying to find confirmation of his greatness. He doesn't notice how servants' glances change. He doesn't see the vacuum forming behind his back. The loneliness of a tyrant is absolute. He has millions of subjects, but not a single friend.
Even Amestris, his cruel wife, now keeps aloof, enjoying her victory over the rival and not interfering in men's games. She thinks her power is unshakable. She underestimates Artabanus. The conspirators act methodically. They recruit supporters, but only those absolutely necessary. The circle is narrow. The risk is exorbitant. One wrong word, and their heads will decorate the gates of Susa. But the fear of Xerxes' madness is stronger than the fear of execution. The court is tired. The empire is tired. Everyone wants stability, and Xerxes is chaos. Nights are getting longer. Shadows in the corners of the palace are thicker. Do you feel this tension? It hangs in the air like a storm cloud. Servants walk on tiptoe, as if afraid to wake a beast. But the beast isn't sleeping. The beast is waiting. Artabanus and Achaemenid choose a date. No need to wait for a holiday or a sign from the stars. One must act before Xerxes falls into a fit of rage again and starts a new purge.
An irony of fate. The king strengthens security, fearing revenge from Masistes' sons, fearing ghosts from Bactria. But he doesn't know that the main sword is already raised over his own neck, and the chief of his guard holds this sword. How does the transformation of loyalty into betrayal happen? At what moment does a man who swore to protect the sovereign at the cost of his life decide to take that life? It doesn't happen instantly. It is erosion, drop by drop, humiliation after humiliation. The bloody reprisal against Masistes was the last drop. The cup is overflowing. We are doing this for Persia, they tell themselves to soothe their conscience. A convenient lie. In reality, they are doing this for themselves. They want to live. And next to Xerxes, life isn't worth a broken derrick. Preparation is complete. Roles are distributed. Achaemenid will ensure access to the bedroom. Artabanus will deliver the strike. Or perhaps they will do it with someone else's hands. No, such a thing must be done oneself. The stakes are too high. The empire froze in anticipation. The rot eating away the foundation has reached the load-bearing structures. The palace, which seemed an indestructible monument of power, is about to collapse. And no one will come to the rescue. Because the tyrant who destroyed his family destroyed his right to protection as well. Xerxes goes to sleep. He covers himself with silks. He closes his eyes, hoping dreams will be merciful. He doesn't know this is his last night. He doesn't know that quiet, creeping steps are already heard in the corridor. Don't you hear? Listen closely. That isn't the rustle of the wind. That is the sound of history turning a page. The era of great conquests is ending. The era of palace coups begins. And this transition will be written in red ink. The conspiracy of shadows has ripened. The fruit is filled with poison and ready to fall. Only a hand needs to reach out and pluck it. Artabanus puts his palm on the dagger hilt. Achaemenid extinguishes unnecessary lamps. Darkness thickens. The time has come. Click. A quiet, dry sound of metal on metal. It is not thunder, not a trumpet call announcing the end of an era. It is simply a bolt sliding back on the doors of the royal bedroom. Achaemenid, the chief eunuch, the man whose duty is to guard the master's sleep, opens the passage of death. A shadow slips silently into the opening. It is Artabanus. In his hand there is no long sword, inconvenient in close quarters. In his hand is an Achaemenid, a short, vicious Persian dagger created for close combat. Feel this moment.
The room smells of stale wine and sweat. On silk sheets sleeps a man who considers himself equal to gods. Xerxes, king of kings, ruler of lands and nations. Now he looks pathetic. His mouth is slightly open, eyelids twitching. He is possibly dreaming of Greece, or burning Athens, or the face of the brother he killed.
He doesn't hear death approaching his bed. Artabanus does not hesitate. He has no time for villainous monologues. This is work. Dirty, bloody work. He clamps the king's mouth with his left hand. Xerxes' eyes fly open. In them is animal horror and complete lack of understanding. How? Who dares touch divine flesh? He tries to jerk, but years of drinking and debauchery made his body flabby, while Artabanus's body is steel-tempered in barracks. Strike. A short, ripping sound. The Achaemenid goes under the ribs, seeks the heart. Xerxes wheezes. Life flows out of him onto sheets that Amestris once embroidered. The great king dies not on a battlefield, not at the hand of a worthy enemy. He dies in his own bed, butchered by his watchmen like a pig at a slaughterhouse. No grandeur, no divine radiance, only the gurgling of blood in the throat and the smell of excrement. The illusion of absolute power dissipates in a few seconds. Artabanus wipes the blade on the coverlet. He looks at the corpse. The deed is done. But this is only half the plan. Killing a king is easy. Surviving afterwards is where the real art lies. If the body is found in the morning, Artabanus will be executed first. He needs a scapegoat. He needs someone on whom this nightmare can be blamed. And this someone must be weighty enough for the lie to look like truth. The heir. Darius, the eldest son. Artabanus and Achaemenid leave the bedroom. They don't run to hide. They run to attack. But not with swords, with words. Their target is the chambers of the younger son, Artaxerxes. Imagine the young prince. Artaxerxes is still a boy, a puppet who hasn't smelled gunpowder. He is woken in the middle of the night. The commander of the guard bursts into his room, disheveled with wild eyes, possibly intentionally soiling his hands in fresh father's blood. "Get up, my lord," Artabanus hisses, falling to his knees. "Disaster! Betrayal! Your father is killed!" The sleepy brain of the prince cannot process the information. Father killed? Who dared? "It is Darius," lies Artabanus, and his lie is more convincing than any truth. "Your older brother. I saw him running out of the king's chambers with a bloody knife. He killed father to take the throne. And now he is coming here. You are next, Artaxerxes. He won't leave you alive." Genius manipulation. Artabanus hits the most primitive points: fear of death and jealousy of the older brother. He gives the prince no time for reflection, no time to ask questions, only action. Fight or run. Kill or die. "We must beat him to it," instigates the eunuch Achaemenid, standing behind. "The guard is loyal to you, but we must act now, before he declares himself king." Artaxerxes, seized by panic, grabs a sword. He believes. Why shouldn't he believe? Before him is faithful Artabanus, protector of the family. The boy turns into a beast driven into a corner. They run through dark corridors of the palace. Shadows dance on the walls, turning into demons. This is the night of long knives, the night when the house of Achaemenids devours itself. They burst in on Darius. The king's eldest son, the lawful heir, is asleep. He killed no one.
He, perhaps, was dreaming the 10th dream of his future reign. The noise wakes him. He props himself up on elbows, squinting from torchlight. "What is happening?" he manages to ask. These are his last words. Artaxerxes, his younger brother, with a yell of rage and horror, throws himself at him. He thinks he is dispensing justice. He thinks he is avenging his father. In reality, he is just a tool, a living sword in Artabanus's hands. Strike. Another strike. Darius tries to cover himself with his hands, but he is unarmed and disoriented. He dies looking into his brother's face, and in his fading gaze, only one question is read. What for? The blood of one brother mixes with the invisible blood of another. The dynasty is decapitated twice in 1 hour. Artabanus stands in the doorway and watches. On his face is a mask of grief, but in his soul he rejoices. This is the perfect crime. The king is dead. The heir is dead. The heir's killer is the new king. But this new king is now bound by blood and lies. Artaxerxes will be eternally grateful to Artabanus for salvation. Artaxerxes will think Artabanus is his only true friend. In reality, Artaxerxes became a hostage. When the sun rises over Susa, the empire will wake up in a new reality. Heralds will announce, "The great Xerxes fell by the vile hand of his son Darius." But justice triumphed. Prince Artaxerxes punished the patricide and ascended the throne. The people will praise the new king. The crowd loves simple stories about revenge and justice. No one will know the truth. No one will see Artabanus, standing behind the right shoulder of the young monarch, barely noticeably smiling. Now he is the real ruler, the puppeteer. He removed strong figures from the board. Only a frightened boy remains in a crown that is too big for him. Artabanus is sure. The game is over. He won. He rewrote history, and the ink is the blood of the royal family. But in this scheme of a perfect coup, there is one variable Artabanus did not account for. He calculated men. He calculated the guard. He calculated ambitions. But he forgot about a factor that lies outside male logic. He forgot about the woman currently sitting in her chambers, listening to this chaos. Amestris. She isn't sleeping. She heard the running around. She heard the screams. And unlike her son Artaxerxes, she doesn't believe in fairy tales. She has a nose for lies, honed by years of life in the harem. She knows her sons. Darius wasn't a killer. And Xerxes, for all his sins, did not deserve such a dog's death. Artabanus thinks he is the gray cardinal. He thinks he has God by the beard. But he made the classic mistake of a usurper. He left the mother alive. While floors are being washed in the palace, erasing traces of the night massacre, Amestris gets up from her chair. Her face is calm as a death mask. She lost a husband. She lost a son. But she didn't lose her mind. She sees the threads stretching from Artabanus's hands to the neck of her surviving child. And she doesn't intend to give her power to an upstart guard commander. Artabanus's triumph lasts exactly as long as the sun needs to rise to the zenith. He feels all-powerful. He is already mentally trying on royal regalia, planning how soon an unfortunate accident will happen to Artaxerxes too. But he doesn't see the shadow hanging over him. The shadow of the Black Queen. The chess game moves to the end game. Few figures remain on the board, but the most dangerous of them are still in play. And when Amestris makes her move, Artabanus will understand. He shouldn't have feared the king with an army. He should have feared the widow with a broken heart and cold reason. The night ended. The day of reckoning arrives. The first rays of sun illuminating Susa after the night of long knives seemed to Artabanus the gold of his new crown. He stood on the terrace, inhaling the cool morning air, and felt like the architect of the universe. The plan worked flawlessly. Xerxes is dead. Darius is dead. Artaxerxes, young and pliable, sits on the throne, but control strings are tightly gripped in the guard commander's fist. Artabanus was sure. He outplayed everyone. He broke the backbone of a 1,000-year dynasty and built his own empire on its ruins, where the king is merely a decoration. He looked at the city waking in ignorance and reveled in his genius. He calculated every step, every reaction of man. But in his triumphal equation, he made one fatal mistake. He forgot about a variable that does not succumb to male logic. He forgot about the woman, sitting deep in the palace, dressed in mourning, shedding not a single tear. Amestris. For Artabanus, she was just a widow, spent material, an old woman whose time had passed. What a monstrous underestimation that was. While the usurper enjoyed power, Amestris conducted her own analysis. She knew her sons. She knew Darius wasn't a killer. And she knew Artabanus. His ambitions always buzzed like bad perfume. Putting facts together, the suddenness of the murder, the lack of witnesses, the too smooth justice, she saw the whole picture with crystal clarity. She understood. By her hands, by the hands of her younger son, the dynasty was destroyed. And now this Hyrcanian upstart plans to rule the country, using Artaxerxes as a screen, until he decides to get rid of him too.
Amestris didn't scream. She didn't run to the guard. The guard is loyal to Artabanus. She did what she did best. She started whispering. Imagine this scene. The chambers of young King Artaxerxes. He is crushed. He just killed a brother, believing he was avenging his father. His hands are shaking. And then the mother enters. Not a crying victim, but a cold, hard-as-rock woman. She sits next to him. She takes his hand and begins to speak. She doesn't comfort him. She opens his eyes. With surgical precision, she takes apart Artabanus's lie, brick by brick. "Look at him," she whispers when the guard commander enters the hall with a report. "Look at how he walks. That is not the walk of a servant. That is the walk of a master. You killed your brother not for your father's sake. You killed him to clear the way for this jackal." The poison of truth penetrates Artaxerxes' consciousness slowly but surely. He begins to notice details. Artabanus's glances, his condescending tone. The way he gives orders in the king's name without even consulting him. The horror of realization covers the prince. He understands that he became not just a fratricide, but an idiot used in the dark. The anger born at this moment in Artaxerxes' soul is not a furious fire. It is icy cold. It is the anger of a man whose soul was stolen. And Amestris directs this anger. "Kill him," says her look, "or he will kill you. There is no third option." The trap for the hunter is prepared with the same thoroughness with which Artabanus prepared Xerxes' murder. But now, roles have changed. The predator becomes the game. Artabanus is summoned for a private audience. He is told the king wants to discuss changing satraps. Artabanus goes calmly. He doesn't take much security. Why? He is the power here. He enters the small throne room, confident, imposing, already mentally distributing the empire's riches among his sons. The doors close behind him. A heavy, dull sound. Artabanus takes a few steps and stops. He sees Artaxerxes. The king stands not by the throne, but in the middle of the room.
In his hands is no scepter. In his hands is a drawn sword. And next to him, like a shadow, stands Amestris. Her face is impenetrable, but triumph burns in her eyes. "You betrayed my house," says the young king. His voice doesn't tremble. It is the voice of a man who has nothing left to lose. Artabanus tries to make excuses. He tries to smile, turn everything into a joke, remind of his loyalty. But he sees. His time is up. The mask is dropped. He grabs his dagger, that same Achaemenid with which he stabbed Xerxes. But he is old, and Artaxerxes is young and full of hatred. The fight is short and brutal. This isn't a duel of honor, it is an execution. The king's blade finds the target. The usurper falls on that very marble he so dreamed of walking on as a master. His blood, thick and dark, spreads on the floor, mixing with invisible traces of Xerxes and Darius's blood. But this isn't the end yet. Amestris knows chopping off the head isn't enough for a snake. You need to crush the eggs. Artabanus has sons. They are in the palace. They hold high posts. If they find out about their father's death, they will raise a mutiny. "Destroy them all," orders Amestris. And the final purge begins. The guard, seeing the wind has changed, instantly swears allegiance to the young king. Loyalty in Persia is a weather vane. Artabanus's sons are dragged from beds, from feast tables. They are killed quickly, without trial. The traitor's lineage is cut out by the root in 1 hour. When the sun sets, the palace sinks into silence again. But this is a different silence. It is not the silence of fear before a madman. It is the dead silence of a graveyard, where only one caretaker remains. Artaxerxes sits on the throne. He won. He avenged his father and brother. He returned power to the dynasty. But look at him more closely. There is emptiness in his eyes. He went through the hell of betrayal, fratricide, and massacre. He became king, but at what price? He is broken, and he knows whom he owes his salvation to. Behind his back, in the shadow of columns, stands Amestris. She is the only one who won in this bloody lottery. She outlived a husband who humiliated her. She outlived rivals who tried to take her place. She outlived a usurper who wanted to destroy her kin. She stands on a mountain of corpses, friends, enemies, family, and looks at the hall with absolute, chilling calm. Amestris doesn't need a crown on her head. It is enough for her that the king is her son, and this son knows Mom is always right. Mom will save. Mom will kill anyone who looks askance. She becomes the real power in the empire. A gray cardinal in black robes. History will remember Xerxes as a great loser who lost a fleet and his head. History will remember Artabanus as a daring traitor. But Amestris? History will remember her as a monster. As a woman who buried people alive to appease underground gods. As a vengeful fury. But let's be honest. In a world where men solve questions with swords and intrigues, where a brother kills a brother for power and a father trades daughters for a whim, could she have survived otherwise? Amestris became what the environment forced her to become, a perfect predator. She cast aside pity, morality, and humanity, leaving only the naked instinct of dominance. The Achaemenid Empire will stand for another century, but it will never be the same. The crack that ran through the royal bedroom split the very foundation of the power. The house of Xerxes fell not from the blow of a Greek phalanx. It rotted from within, poisoned by the venom of its own lust and cruelty. Amestris will live to a ripe old age. She will see kings change, cities crumble. She will die in her bed, surrounded by fear and respect, undefeated. She proved the main theorem of power. The winner is not the one who hits harder, but the one who is ready to go to the very end, stepping over any taboos. The curtain falls, candles go out, the smell of blood weathers away, giving way to the eternal smell of dust. And now ask yourself a question, only honestly. Looking at this story, at this anatomy of self-destruction, who is the real evil here? The lustful king who lost his bearings? The traitor who decided to save his skin? Or the woman who answered cruelty with even greater cruelty to survive? And most importantly, if you found yourself in this snake pit, in this golden palace where every smiling friend hides a dagger, are you sure you would have acted differently? Power is not a shining sword. Power is dirty hands. And Amestris had the dirtiest hands, which means she was the most powerful.